Hello, this is Dave Dunn Electrical. You find me down here at the customer site in a paint shop. They recently had a problem with this roller shutter door, which has a three-phase motor powering this roller door here. The controller's broken basically. The control of the door is failing. It's a printed circuit board type. So what you have is a three-phase motor, and you have a reversing contactor. This is the new one, the new reversing controller. And that is controlled by the limit switches just above the motor that are mechanically driven, and they're position switches. So when the door reaches the level we want to say it's closed, we set an adjustable switch to the right position to stop it there, and then we have an extra switch afterwards. So if for any reason the motor keeps going and passes that first switch where it should have stopped, we have a safety limit. We call it an excess limit. We have that on the down and the up. So I've just wired in this new controller. And then as regards this has start buttons and a stop button. I've also cut in an emergency stop button, a twisty type one that has to be untwisted if you want to reset things. And we fuse down for 2 amps just for the control wiring, because it only goes up through the limits and then powers the coils of these contactors, so it doesn't need much power whatsoever. So you have your 3-phase feed in, and then this is your limit cable down here. We take one of the phases, so these coils on these contactors are 400 volt. So one of the phases is permanently connected to one side of the coil. The other one is taken on something of a journey. So I've fused down to start with. The next place we go is the normally closed contact on the overload. If the motor's drawing too much power, this overload will trip and it will open up this normally closed contact here. In which case, no power gets past this switch. So long as the motor hasn't tripped and our overload's happy with the situation, I've wired down through an emergency stop switch, which again is normally closed unless someone's hit the emergency stop switch in. And then we go back up to this cable. This cable then goes up to those limits up there on top of the motor, which I'll show you shortly. First thing it does is it passes through the 2 excess switches, both for open and close. So provided both of those are closed, which means the door isn't in the wrong position and gone past its working limit, power will travel through those 2 switches and then is given to the 2 working switches, the working close and the working open. And they come back respectively. The open is on this grey wire. So long as the open switch is closed, the working open, we have power down to this switch. And the working close is on this black wire here. So long as the working close the switch is closed, so the door hasn't reached its position, there'll be power on this wire. From there on in, if we take the closed side, we come down, we come through this normally open switch, which the mechanical switches on this dull starter type device press in momentarily. So they momentarily close, which then brings power through this wire, round. It passes through the normally closed contact of its opposite number. There's 2 contactors here. One is to drive the motor up, one is to drive the motor down. It has to pass through the opposite first and through the normally closed to make sure that this coil is not already energized. If you brought both of these contactors in at the same time, you would cross the phases and you'd short circuit between the 2 phases. So they have this electrical interlock to stop that happening. It would then come out of that normally closed terminal there, and then it loops round, going to the coil of this one, so long as that contact is closed. If this one was energized, that contact opens and you can't supply power to this one to power this one up. These contactors must not be on at the same time. They're also mechanically linked by the manufacturer inside, so that you can't power them both up at the same time. Okay, let's show it working. So we'll go with the close first. Let's just turn the power on. Now, the close on this I've done as a non-latching contact, meaning as soon as you take your finger off the momentary switch, it stops closing. Therefore, the operator, if he has a van here or something doing a delivery or anything else, you can't just press it and walk away and have something come under the doorway. Worst case would be a person, obviously, and have the door hit them. Now, on the open, there's no reason, it's a latching contact. So if you look here, where I come back from my limit wire, as long as that's good, as soon as you press this momentary switch, this normally open momentary switch in, you'll then supply power down this little red, up this red wire, again through the normally closed contact of its opposite number, and eventually round to the coil. Now, as soon as that coil comes in, it's mechanically linked to this terminal here, which is normally opened. Now, if you can see the limit powers, if the limit power is good here on this grey, when the contactor comes in, because you've just pressed that momentary switch, it mechanically pulls in these normally open contacts, these 1, 2 normally open contacts. So this is what's called a latching setup, a latching contactor in this case, and it comes over the top there and it'll go for that normally open. So as soon as you power the contactor will hold itself in until you break power coming along here, which we do over here at the stop switch, which is built into the overload. So if the overload pulled too much power electrically, it opens, and also when you press the mechanical button on the front, it presses that, which opens the power up, thus stopping the door. But this is latching, so just to show you that. And you see now it's latched in, so we can walk away and the door will quite happily go up, and you can see by that little yellow indicator there that it's latched. But if we break the power here, it stops. Let's try the emergency stop while we're here. So we'll latch that in. So now I've pressed this emergency stop in on my door front, you can see that the door's now stopped. It won't do anything again. It won't do anything again until we reset that stop switch.